Hello SGD, Sacred Geometry Decoded, and the question is, who is Hermanubis? So this is a gem 2nd century BC Romans in Egypt, and this is pretty much a standard depiction of Hermanubis. Here we see a later drawing again, but again this illustration draws on the ancient traditions of Hermes, or Hermanubis, and we'll go through that. This is I'm not sure, a Greek or a Roman mosaic, but the Greco-Roman period, again, we see Hermanubis. And this is also ancient sculpture of Hermanubis, and there are a few features. So, well, the dog head, let's start with that. And also the Kundalini, sometimes, well, the caduceus, the wand of Hermes, or Mercury. You can see again the wand there. Now, we'll come to, again, the caduceus, the twin snakes, and the measuring rod, or the wand, and again, these snakes. Now, the standard will come to, so just to keep these in mind, what we have is more the early Greek version of the caduceus in these depictions. And again, here but we'll come to the one that's more common known. But so, who is Hermanubis? Here we see various depictions of him, but to understand that we need to go back to ancient Egypt and the Book of the Dead. And here's another example of it. So the Egyptian Book of the Dead has the journey of the soul through to the Jewel. Now you might notice the sistrum there as well. But and the journey through the departed soul would have to travel through a series of challenges and passed a test until finally they were brought before Osiris, and he was over here, but and their heart would be measured against the feather. So that's the heart of the deceased measured against the feather to see if they can pass into the underworld. Now Anubis, the jackal-headed, dog-headed god, he so you often see either is he sort of sphinx form, but there we see carved and a amulet, again, all carrying the ankh as well. But Anubis led souls into the underworld, and jackal-headed, now it's often said, because jackals were often seen at graveyards, that's one of the reasons for this depiction of it. But Anubis was also the god of embalming, the science of embalming, of mummification. And so the earlier version, when Osiris was killed, he was embalmed by Anubis, and then, so Anubis was the underworld god, and then I think it was the Middle Kingdom, it sort of switched to Osiris becoming the god of the underworld, something like that, but still the connection between Anubis and the underworld remains throughout the entirety of that period. And we also have Thoth, the bird-headed god. Now, he's the god of knowledge. He's also the Egyptian god of weights and measures, knowledge, science, weights and measures, science as well. So these scientific connections too there. So Anubis, the dog-headed god who led souls into the underworld. Now we come back to Hermanubis, and who is he? Well, it's a fusion of Anubis, Thoth, and Hermes, or Mercury. And again we see these, the caduceus with the wand, translates to measuring rod, and the twin snakes there. So Hermanubis, dog-headed god, Hermes or Mercury, again, now this is a more modern Roman depiction of the caduceus, the wand, and the snakes, but the same thing happening there, even the wings on the end. And what did Hermes Mercury do? Well, amongst other things, he led souls into the underworld. He was especially in that way that he could pass back and forth between the underworld. He would deliver them to Charon, who then led them across the river Styx. But again, sort of a more again, leading souls into the underworld, and that special characteristic of Hermes Mercury. That's where Hermanubis is a dog-headed god. So Anubis, dog-headed god. Now this Hermetic, I think this was 15th or 16th century, but anyway, around that really chunky period of Hermeticism in Europe, we see again, the caduceus, the wings on the caduceus, and also the feather, just as the feather is weighed against the heart. So the lies told in life would be weighed against the feather of truth, and if you passed the test, that was the final test, you would be allowed into the underworld. Okay, so now we go to Thoth, the Egyptian god. He's a ibis headed, and he's a bird hybrid. So you have your Anubis picture, but if we go back to, okay, so Thoth, the bird-headed god, 2 rods and a snake on each, so 2 snakes. Now, Hermes, bird fusion, bird hybrid. It can be said he's also carrying the caduceus. This depiction doesn't quite, well, the story is that he got the wand from Apollo, and then later he found 2 snakes fighting and separated them. But again, even in the Mercury, the Roman depiction, the bird feathers, the bird wings, bird hybrid, also carrying the 2 snakes, the rod with the 2 snakes, just like Thoth. Now that's not just that's no mistake at all, because Thoth was the god of knowledge, as well as the god of weights and measures, science, and Hermes, Mercury, the god of knowledge, also the god of weights and measures. So Hermanubis is a fusion of Anubis, Thoth, and Hermes/Mercury, Hermes Trismegistus, Hermeticism. And what it might be worth mentioning again, so I did a video on myth and morality, so whether it's a Book of the Dead, Code of Hammurabi, the Bible, throughout this period, the continual references to the importance of weights and measure, which is a connection to honesty as well, and true dealing in commerce. So in this picture, so amongst the spell 125 Book of the Dead, which is pretty much the the books of law, as in the Old Testament Bible, many references just to focus on this one. I have not added to the pan of the scales. We see the pan of the scales, the heart and the feather. And I have not tampered with the plumb bob of the scales. He's holding a plumb bob there as well, which is a nice little reference. You might even notice what's going on there, but this has been throughout, just repeated throughout this entire thing. Now, Hermes was also the god of commerce. For instance, here in Sydney, there's a sculpture group which includes commerce. There's also the Lady of Commerce, which is basically the same depiction, but what's going on here? Well, Hermes, Mercury, is also the god of commerce, and that has to do with navigation and weights and measures. Now, in her hand, she's holding a weight, and in her other hand, she has the wand, the measuring rod, the reed, the wand. That's what it translates to, weights and measures, commerce as well. Just like these other depictions of Hermes, where he's holding this object in one hand, and with a weight, just like the scepter and orb. So you see the kings and queens of old and new always take that picture with the orb in one hand and the scepter in the other. The ruler makes the rules in regards to the rule of weights and measures. And that's what these Hermanubis pictures are showing as well. The weight in one hand and the measuring rod in the other. And so sometimes there's so that's a lady, but also, for instance, statue of Mercury, Hermes in Rochester in New York. And what does he have? Weights in one hand, for instance, and the measuring rod in the other. And that's who Hermanubis is. It's a fusion of Anubis and Thoth, who are pretty much gods of science. Thoth, god of knowledge. Anubis, he understood the science of embalming. And Thoth was the god of weights and measures. Hermes, Mercury, the god of weights and measures. So that's who they are. And this goes throughout the Hermetic tradition. And it's just one of these things that keeps carrying on and is embedded in all the texts, all the artworks, all the descriptions, and it's just one of those aspects which isn't really well covered. It's, as some people said, it's dry. And so it's not sensational enough and not cutesy enough, I suppose, but that's what it is. There it is. And so who is Hermanubis? Well, science, weights and measures, the underworld, passing of souls. And with that, enjoy. I hope you enjoyed and have a good one. Weights and measures. Measure, measure, and the truth shall set you free.